Um, my name is Constantin. I run a design studio called Studio Elastic. At the moment, I'm based in Austria, in Vienna, and I'm calling you guys from our little boat. It's a very small boat. It's an 18-foot sailboat. It's very messy at the moment because we only launched it in the lake close to Vienna called Neusiedler See. I will show you guys around a little bit. So this is the boat. At the moment, the mast is not standing. I will stand. I will pull it up tomorrow, hopefully, if weather permits. Yeah, it's very small, and basically the reason why I'm doing this talk from our boat is because this is going to be my studio for the next few months. Basically, me and my girlfriend, we bought this boat a few years ago. It was on the lake, and then we decided that we wanted to bring it into the Mediterranean to do a sailing expedition. Also working from that boat, so basically living and working from it. Two people can fit it. It's very small. It's literally as big as a car. It's about it's 5 meters 90 long. We have two little berths, which is two little beds. The sail is here right now. That's one of the main sail. So that's where I'm gonna sleep, and that's where my girlfriend is going to sleep. Katalin, she's a filmmaker. We're also gonna make a film about this whole experience. And yeah, and then this actually is also a sleeping spot, which we're gonna turn into storage area. In here is gonna be our cooker, which is not here right now. So we can cook here as well. And the idea is to basically sail. The original idea was to sail the boat from north of Italy to Greece, as a start, and then see where we continue. It's a bit adventurous, but we like that. We like adventure. Yeah, and basically my talk is about running running a design practice that is as resilient as possible. The last month showed that you really have to kind of like adjust to the situation you're in as quick as possible. Otherwise you might lose your business or you might lose your existence. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people have had to face that situation. Losing their jobs and losing their livelihoods. Um, my Studio Elastic, I founded in the early 2000s. When I was founding the studio, I was already, when it came to finding a name, it was basically very important to me. Like, most important thing to me was that I'm going to be flexible. I'm going to be free. I didn't see myself, being stuck to a certain space, like a certain office or like an office space. And I knew I wanted to be flexible, not only in terms of like where I'm going to be based, but also in terms of where I'm in terms of the jobs I'm going to take, like the kind of work I'm going to do. So I called it Studio Elastic because I knew that allows me to be flexible in terms of geographic position, but also in terms of like what I'm actually producing. Like I had a feeling I could be doing graphic design, but I could also be doing films, or artistic practice. So yeah, so that has been going on for the last probably almost 20 years now. I will share a few images while you can watch me on the boat. So My studio output is really, I would say it's like my main focus is on typography, because I studied typography also in college, and I had a very strong typographic foundation. I also make typefaces. I create typefaces. You can download quite a few of them for free online, either from my website or from Behance. You go and find Studio Elastic on Behance. Yeah, so and then obviously illustration, because very often, I need image materials for my design work. So kind of obvious to create it yourself, like photography or illustration. So I like to illustrate. Um, let me see. So yeah, so this is basically, that's my studio. Um, it fits into a backpack. It always has fit into a backpack. I do have a studio also in my house, with an external screen and like more space, but I can do some crazy drawings there, and I have work archive and books and records and things like that. But basically, my studio, has for the last 20 years fitted into a backpack. Um, I studied in London at a place called London College of Printing, which now is called London College of Communication. I did an MA and a master's in typographic studies, and these were my two tutors, Russ Besley and Ian Noble, who were really like, they both were or are. One of them, unfortunately, Ian is not alive anymore, but Russ and Ian, they both were ex-punks, and they really taught us. Um, they really made us work a lot with being aware about our authorship as designers. So basically, like, be aware that as designers we have a very strong voice, and it's and it's very important to know what you're voicing. So if you're doing advertising, then sometimes you have to, and you have to make a living, but you have to be aware that you what kind of messages you send out into the world. And so these guys shaped me and my fellow peers very strongly, and a lot of us, of my fellow peers, are in the kind of like area of you know also political activism, and a lot of book design, and not many of us went into commercial advertising, more really like artistic, and kind of like using our voice as a kind of like authors, just not just being the designers. Sometimes I wish I would be more of an author, even, quite often I am in a kind of client relationship, but I always try to have like a very kind of like artistic output, my studio output. So yeah, so I owe these guys a lot of my uh, professional attitude. Um, This is a project I did in London for my MA. It was a project in public space. I basically walked around. I chose an area, Spitalfields, East London, and I walked around this area at night, painting a 2 kilometer wide line onto the pavement, and then spraying stencils onto the pavement with messages that would have content of like local history facts, and kind of like very poetic but very site specific content. And the idea basically behind this project was that I got really interested in city walks, and I wanted to create a city walk that would allow you to basically do a city walk without needing a tour guide. So basically you can just follow that line, and then you can walk around this neighborhood and find out more about it, because I figured that in this area, Brick Lane in London, there has been so much gentrification going on, and people really don't know much about the area. They don't know that that it's been the place, where immigrants for the last, few hundred years have always started. Immigrants who would come to London would start there, and then, once they started to make a standing or make a living, they would move on, and new immigrants would come in. And so I created Jack the Ripper. Also was kind of like walking around in these neighborhoods, killing in these neighborhoods. So there's a lot of history behind those walls and the bricks, and I wanted to kind of like make people aware about that. No, it was totally anonymous. The project, I got caught by the police. Actually, it was really scary. But I told them what I was doing, and they said they liked it, and they let me continue. So yeah, I was actually I also wrote an academic paper about that project, and even though my tutors were totally freaking out about it because they didn't know how to deal with it because it was so on the edge of legality and being illegal, but still being typographic and dealing with communication a lot. So it was very tricky, but in the end, it was very, very successful, and it got published for many years afterwards. It got published in quite a few books and stuff. Um, this is my current business card, and I got it done, and it really shows like my heritage somehow, like typography, and basically I got it done by this guy Wolfgang Schön, who is this beautiful character based in Vienna. If any of you guys visit Vienna, I think you guys should visit him. He's the last copper plate printer, or one of the last copper plate printers in Austria, and he has a studio in the first district. Um, that really throws you back like 100 years, basically. Like you enter that space, and it's like it really feels like it really feels like you like a time machine travel somehow. And I met him, and really kind of fell in love with him, like with his way of being, and like his professionalism, and what he's actually doing. And so basically you come into his studio and you sit down, and he treats you like royalty, like old monarchic royalty almost. And you sit down, and then he shows you these books of business cards that he has done since uh, years, and his parents even, since really like the last 100 years. And you see everyone in there, like Austrian politicians, all with their like phone numbers and stuff, like literally, like collection of like the most impressive people. And basically, yeah, and I told him I wanted a business card, and he showed me his machine. It's a pantograph, which is basically like a letter puncher, and he has these like fonts, and then he can choose from different fonts. And I basically told him I want you to design it. I would like you to design it, and I would like you to use a letter mix. Like a mix of all the great fonts that you have. And and so yeah, and so he basically came back with this, which I really love. Um, so it was somehow a collaboration, and it's interesting because like 50 years ago, literally, like my job, I would have done what he's doing. It's like I'm a graphic designer now working with a laptop, and like traveling the world. But basically, 50 years ago I would have been a copper plate printer, and a few hundred years ago I would have been like one of those monks writing like hand drawing bibles, basically. That's like really interesting to look at the history of our profession, as designers. So yeah, so that's a really beautiful collaboration. That's him at work in his studio, looking at the plates, copper plates. That's the printing press here on the side, and that's his studio. It's really like a time travel, like those walls. It's just full of. It smells like history also in there. So yeah, so what else do I do? I do a lot of I work a lot with musicians. I do a lot of album artworks and music related design. This is a band called The Acid. You should go and check them out if you don't know them. One of their band members, Rye X, you might know him. I also designed his debut album. But this is another project of his called Howling. And basically, So yeah, my talk is about resilience, right? So I'm basically a one-man show. So I don't have any employees, but I did have an employee, a young girl who came straight out of school, out of college, Felicitas, and I basically hired her because she sent me her a Behance portfolio, and I saw these amazing photos from from the airplane, aerial photos, and I saw them and they were so mesmerizing. And so I hired her. I had a lot of work to do, and I hired her, and she was with me for about half a year. Learned a lot, and it was great collaboration. And then this project came along where I had total creative freedom, and the project was called Sacred Ground. So I asked her for her permission, and I took her photography, and I basically created these stones out of the aerial footage. So I created for each song of the album, I created a stone, and and we were also I was later then also asked to make a music video, and it was winter time, and I knew I had to film outside, so I looked at all the options, and I basically came up with Madeira, which is this Portuguese island off the coast of of the on the Atlantic coast, and flew there with a friend and assistant, and we made a music video there, basically filming like stones and nature, and yeah, so that's another music related project. Just now, recently, I've worked with friends who launched something which I'm not like the typical person, like target audience. It's a face mask for men. They kind of try, they're really kind of revolutionizing, you know, uh, the cosmetic industry somehow by launching products for men also. And it was really important to have something that has a very strong design appeal. We won a certificate of typographic excellence from the Type Directors Club in New York, with this a really interesting process, because I would always try I was like, I was working on it, and I was like, what is this? It's like, I'm never going to use that. I don't quite understand what kind of man would put face masks on, but it was interesting to go through this process also, and we found, I think we found a very nice solution. Um, So this is a project I was working on, using kind of like funny printing techniques, risography printing with risography, which most of you guys probably know, similar to screen printing, but it's a copy machine. This was for a restaurant in the Museum of Applied Arts in Vienna. I was doing there for quite a few years. I was doing their menus, and each menu was limited, so to a certain amount, and they were all hand printed. Most of them got stolen also, and the remaining ones ended up in the permanent collection of the permanent graphic collection of the museum. Um, Let me see if there's anything else in here. Yeah, there's also another project I'm working on, which is so this is Insta follows, Instagram handles. That if you have Instagram, most of you probably do, please feel free to follow. The main one is Studio Elastic, but then there's another project that's very dear to my heart, which is Font Wien, which is basically a project where I am walking around the city in Vienna and basically documenting typography in public space, like signs and sign writing and stuff like that. So yeah, so please feel free to follow any of these, and yeah, and we shall be posting some work from the sailboat. So basically, yeah, so we're not in the Mediterranean now. We're gonna postpone that. We postponed that for next year. So we're gonna be on the Lake Neusiedl, which is a gorgeous lake. I know it because my girlfriend made a documentary film about it 2 years ago, and we basically did a lot of research, recce, driving around the lake, meeting great people, And yeah, then it's gorgeous. There's some, it's literally, it looks like Africa. There's places here on the lake where you really honestly think that you're in the middle of Africa. It's really wonderful. It's got a little bit muddy water. It's very, very low water. The water is usually like around 1 meter 50, but it's gorgeous sailing. It's actually, they do the World Cup in windsurfing here also, and kite surfing. So it's world famous for sailing. So yeah, so we're going to be sailing here all summer and working from the boat, and hopefully, if this whole situation, coronavirus situation, gets better, we're hopefully going to bring the boat to Italy next year. But yeah, so that talk was just basically to inspire you guys to, follow your dreams and stay flexible, and if you're starting your own thing, to basically, yeah, do it your way. It's like, if you don't feel like sitting in an office, then work from a park bench. I think it's much easier now than it's ever been before. It's worked already 20 years ago when I used to have to drive around with my laptop on my lap, in a car, and it's called war driving, where you were looking for open Wi-Fi networks because we didn't have like phones with hotspots, and I would just like, find internet connections, on the street, and have this like thrill basically of never knowing how to deliver, but always delivered on time, and there was always a way. So I would like to inspire you guys to find your own terms, and collaborate with other like-minded people, and follow your dreams. And if your dream is, cycling around the world, then cycle around the world and bring your laptop with you. Don't show it to everyone, keep it in your backpack, and try to find quiet places to do your work. And there is always a way. I think, even now it's shown that, where it got so scary for a moment, and really like I didn't work literally for 8 weeks, but I'm that much more busy now after than I've been before. So, it's just be flexible, and try to do it, you know, try to do it your way. I would say that's my kind of like message, I hope. And yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm sorry I missed my slot earlier. There was a hardcore storm coming in. It's the first time I'm doing this from the boat, but hopefully not the last. And gorgeous to be invited, exciting, and yeah. And I hope you guys are all safe and well, and as resilient as you can be. Thank you very much.